we've got to hire a lot of people over our time. Taryn, back when you were in the hiring days of roasters, how many people do you think you hired?
Oof. 20.
Yeah, I think that between all of our different accounts, we've hired a grip of people for Pete Vargas, Pedro Adeo, even like some of the guys over at Prime were in the middle of doing vetting and doing some hiring for them. Grow Rev, we're in the middle of doing some hiring for them. I think Steven and I have talked about even Rainmakers. Like, what are we thinking about? What is good and where's a good spot to bring in more employees? And so I just thought I would start us from the beginning and kind of work us through what we do with hiring. And then as we get into that, also talk about, okay, so you hired them. Now what do you do with them? How are you onboarding them? Because I think a lot of people just assume, I just need to get someone in here for help. I just need help in this. And they get so panicky about it, getting in help, not realizing the day that person steps in your door is actually the day that more work starts. You know what I mean? Because they need to learn all the stuff you're trying to hand to them. It's not fair. No matter how smart they are, you can't just throw them into the deep end and be like, hey, I hope this works out. They got to learn your culture. They've got to learn the way you want them to handle things. They've got to know what's the hierarchy, who do they answer to, who can ask them for things, who cannot ask them for things. And so I think realizing, yeah, a lot of times we identify we need people. And then the next big hurdle is how do we find the right people? But then once we find the right people, how do we make sure they stick with us, right? And a lot of that can happen through onboarding. So taking notes and rocking a bus because you're a pro mom, Kimberly. And I think, do I have the right one here? Bam, look at that. Savannah stole your job. So the Slido's in there. So we're just gonna talk about all the moving pieces. So I feel like we've really refined things down over time on how we do hiring and searching for people. Recruiting is a really crazy game, especially right now. It's everybody knows it's the employee's world. Like everybody's willing to poach people from other places based upon dollar bills. And if you haven't created a solid structure, a solid internal culture, the dollar bill still speaks pretty loud. You know what I mean? Like that's something that most people are going to be moved by. But a lot of times, especially with the new generation coming up, they're not as concerned about the dollars they're making as much as the experience they have at work. So culture and giving them something that they can feel a part of, especially in coming out of post-COVID, coming out of a world where we're all really isolated. If you can lean into your culture and wed people together, most people don't have solid community right now. So if you can make your place of business a place not only they get paid, but also they love to be connected with the people there. Then when somebody comes along to poach them, because you probably only hire badass people and they're gonna be poached by somebody, like they'll lean more heavily into, I just like the people I work with. No, I just like the things that I'm doing. And yeah, that could be more money, but it's an unknown. And I don't know that I want to trade up what I have for what might not be as good, even if the pay is a little bit better. So what we've been doing with recruiting lately is we'll start people with a gap analyzer. So at the very beginning of Ops Experts Club, we gave you guys a gap analyzer. If you haven't used one of those yet, I think it's a great tool. It's a free tool you can use here. But the nice thing about the gap is you can take inventory of players on the field and identify, okay, where should hiring happen? How much bandwidth are people using? And then usually we'll move from the gap to a delegate and elevate exercise, which we also took you through in Ops Experts. If you want to look back on that a little bit, where we'll take all of the information that comes out of the gap and we'll drop it into somewhere in the 4 quadrants of the delegate and elevate to determine what's that person's highest brilliance, right? That's love it and am good at it or great at it. And then down the bottom quadrant is what am I not good at and I hate it. And usually that's the spot where we're like, how can I strip off of my people the things that they just do not like doing? Things that maybe aren't even part of their role. A lot of the businesses we start with, start small and then experience this like hockey stick of a growth pattern. And so they've just kind of thrown people into the rungs. Job descriptions aren't super clear. People have grandfathered into jobs that don't even make sense with their job title anymore. And so something like the gap analyzer kind of exposes where everybody's time's at. Delegate and elevate kind of exposes where people's passions are at. And then from there, you can build out job descriptions if you don't have those yet. And then identify what are the gaps that are not identified in this job description that I need to go to market for. A lot of times it's assistance. A lot of times it's like second man down within a department, just to take off some of the busy work, because our highest paid employees, we should be looking for the highest ROI from, right? The highest return of investment. Like if we're paying somebody a lot, sure, they could do everything down below them, but is that the best use of their money? Is that the best use of your money, their time? Probably not. So could you bring in somebody that's substantially paid less, that are probably smart enough to take on those duties and want to escalate within your organization? For sure you can. And a lot of people are looking for good culture if you've got that. So gap, then delegate and elevate, then job description. And in the job description, we highly recommend speaking to your culture, speaking to your 5 core values or whatever your core values are, telling people really honestly what makes your business great beyond what this job is going to entail. And then we go to market. For us, we use a couple of different platforms. We'll take that job description and we'll post on LinkedIn, we'll post on Indeed, and then we'll just start taking applicants. As applicants are coming through, what'll happen is we'll begin to vet them, right? So not everybody's a winner. Yeah, saying like not everybody is good at what they do or have even done the thing we're hiring before, And so I think that Collab teams send somebody on our team. Stephanie and Drew actually do this for us, where they'll go and they'll start clear cutting the field. I mean, like who is going to need to be escalated up to that hiring manager? Not everybody should, right? And it's probably not a great idea to give everybody to the hiring manager. We're trying to break it down so it's simpler. Let's make an easy decision on them. Because I found, and there's one of our clients right now that's going away with hiring that I'm like, I don't think that's the best way to do it, actually. Like you're using your top people to vet all the candidates. And what does that mean for the things you were hoping to get out of your top people? They only have a limited resource of time. So if you could like pare that down, give that to somebody that's less consequential, it's only going to benefit you more in the long run. So then we rattle them up, let people interview them. And then I've got some comments on how interviewing goes. What do you guys think? Taryn, Savannah, Kimberly, I know you guys have all done some hiring. What are your thoughts on that early entrance process of identifying the need and then going to market for the need and then first round of interviews? Do you have any good insights to that?
Well, I think I'll start by saying, obviously you don't always need to hire somebody, right? Like
It's true.
we do the Gap app. You don't always, we're not just saying hire because
True.
we're all business people. We understand you want to make more money, hire less people, make more profit. But we're talking about the situation where, okay, you got that hockey stick now. All your people are burnt out.
Right.
And then sometimes the entrepreneurs, they don't really know what's going on. Everybody down below feels it and he doesn't. And so now we're talking about, all right, your people are burning out. If we don't hire somebody, they're all going to jump ship and you're going to be left with people that don't know anything. So, it's not always the answer though, right? Which is good to know. Sometimes you just need to rearrange job descriptions and roles.
Yep.
And maybe just put things in different places correctly. But when it is the solution, then yeah, it's a pretty lengthy process. You always want to hire slow and fire fast, and hiring slow takes a while. When I opened a new coffee shop store, I went through hundreds of applications. I made 100 phone calls. I had 50 in-person interviews, and I hired 6 people. It was a lengthy process.
A joke.
But those 6 people I hired stuck around. They were great hires.
I think one of
Took
them's
a lot
name
of time.
Ben Clatterbuck or something like that. It's like Clatterbuck, was he one of your hires?
No, Ben was working there before I was.
Oh, dang it. You were one of his hires. Okay, go ahead.
Ben trained me.
That's amazing. And then you
And then I
came to
trained
us. How did
Ben.
that feel?
It felt good. Yeah, so it's that saying that you hear, hire slow, fire fast. And
I think
sometimes it
too,
takes a while. Just don't get frustrated, and even tell your team like, hey, we're working on it. We want to make sure we find the right fit. Just hold on a little longer. We don't want to just hire somebody that's not going to work. We're really trying to find that right fit. And then they'll understand too, okay, they're searching, they're looking, they're not just going to hire anybody, but they really want to hire the right person.
I think that's really good too, because that is the gap analyzer. I always think of the gap, but you're right, there is the overlap. And sometimes it's just the overlap of, wait a minute, we have 2 people that are doing very similar duties. Like, could we just consolidate that into one? And then automatically you've created some bandwidth, and I think that's a really good point. Also, I would say on top of that, when it comes to hiring, EOS is really big about what are the seats on the bus, and then determine what bus should fill those seats. Because if you start building job descriptions around a person, what happens when that person leaves? That maybe the next hire in wasn't good at all those things that person did. So be really clear on your org chart and your org structure before you go to hire, and really ask yourself. I think that's really good insight too, of like, is there overlap? A, B, are the job descriptions clear enough? And C, if there are if somebody's become a catch-all, like I'd get rid of the kitchen drawer, right? All of us have one of those kitchen drawers. You open it up and it's like all the crap is just sitting in that kitchen drawer. Or maybe that's just my house's. Like it's all the pens and all the keys and all the stuff, like it's like a junk drawer. Like sometimes people can become like that in their job description, where they just are the catch-all. They're doing a bunch of stuff and it doesn't, that they're crossing departments. They're crossing like parameters. They don't even answer to the person that probably should be making all those decisions. And I think that, so being really clear on, let's try and drill down on each one. And because Amelia agrees, that was the whole reason. Amelia heard us talking about this in the other room. She's like, Mom, don't shortchange me about new hires. You know how passionate I am about that.
So passionate about all things operations. Lots to say.
Yeah, such an angel. She's looking so beautiful this morning.
I think,
Kimberly, do you have any goodness to share with us?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you and Aaron or what you and Taryn are saying, because it's definitely a process, and you're already like up to your neck and stuff. And the thought of like drilling down in those areas feels really overwhelming. And so you guys have done a great job at coming in and introducing the gap analyzer, introducing the delegate and elevate. And that's something that's helped us see, like, even some people will apply for a job they're not great at, just to get their foot in the door because they want to work for your company. And that happened recently with this girl. Like, she's amazing. Like, she's not my highest, she applied for a sales team. She's not my highest converter, but she's got enough to like hang around, but we had an opportunity come up with our higher ticket offer. And she's like, hey, I really want to do this. Like, I want to be concierge for this service. And when I approached Steven about it, he was like, yes, I was hoping she would. And it was just like, it was kind of a perfect situation, but it made me think, like, how many other people like applied for admin positions or, any of these other things just to get their foot in the door because they really wanted to do something else. And so taking the time to drill down on that is actually going to save you a ton of time and money and turnover in the long run. I truly believe. And then the other thing that Rainmakers has done so well is hire from the heart, which can feel scary. I know, like, and that's, like you said, when you have someone go and like kind of clean up all the applicants to bring to your hiring manager, that's really smart. But your hiring manager should be someone who knows the culture really, really well and knows the vision like the back of their hand, and be looking for people who have that in their heart, because it's so much easier to train skill than it is heart. If someone has a personality situation that doesn't quite fit the culture of the company, it's just like almost impossible to ever tweak that. And it's always going to be a friction point. But if you have that heart, then that person is going to be very easily moldable for the job that they need to do, even if it is one of those foot in the door, because I want to do other things kind of job. It's just like they carry the vision and they have the heart to follow through with it.
No, that's really good. I know for us, go ahead, Taryn, jump in.
Oh, thank you, Aaron. Well, that's a beautiful point. I'm glad you brought it up. It is very true when you see new hires, that passion really does way more than the experience. It's like if you have two people side by side, this one really wants your job, has zero experience, but passionately wants to work for your company, for you. And this one has experience and just wants a job. Like, this hire is most likely going to do way better. They're going to be so much more driven for this position.
I think sometimes too, it's nice to hire somebody that only has a little bit of experience, because it gives you opportunity to train them your way. Sometimes if I hire a specialist to come in, they've got their own ways. They think they know everything. And then it's really hard to get them to graft into your culture, because they think they're the expert in the room, and they probably are, but they have to mesh your culture. Otherwise, they're just bringing somebody else's culture. And I think we talked about this last week, but being at that war room gathering and seeing all these high level CEOs and the guy from Kajabi standing up and saying, hey, it's a whole different animal when you have this multi-million-dollar company. And now all the top people from these other big companies want to be hired by you. And if you bring too many of those big guns in, they're going to change your whole culture if you don't lean into culture, so you got to be really careful on we've created something really, really special. And I feel like that's even my heart with the Collab team, is like, I really love our 11. I feel like we're all in such good tune. We all get the heart behind it. And I'm nervous sometimes about bringing new people in, because I'm like, are they going to get it? What are they going to introduce into the ecosystem? Like, being really careful. Yes, absolutely. Ocean's 11 is amazing. I wanted to show you guys this real quick before we walk away from this subject, because we have more things to talk about. But this is the Vision Traction Organizer that's part of EOS's system. And the core values is always something that I think are really important to hire from. These are our 8: worth, reciprocity, boundaries, excellence, respect, insane value, full transparency, ownership, and follow through. Those are the things that should categorically speak Collab team. You know what I mean? So as I'm walking through hiring on people, bringing on people, those are the things I want. And then operations 11. I thought we were going to get a good Mumford and Son quote out of that one. And then what we'll always do with our 555. So the 555s we talked about before too, but this is quarterly evals. And we always start with, and I've really tried to lean into this even more this quarter, of, okay, so let's look at our ethos. And as we review our ethos together, let's read through it, because I at least once a quarter want to be reading through what's important to us. What is our vision? What's our mission? What's our wow filter? What's our guiding values internally? And then what does it promise other people? Service promises on the external. Like, let's get really clear on, this is our culture, this is where we operate from. And then we'll go through at the beginning of every eval how we're measuring up, so if this is Taryn, like, I'll rate Taryn, and then Taryn will rate me on how I'm showing up with our guiding values. Same thing with service promises. I'll rate Taryn, Taryn will rate me. And I just feel like it keeps it really honed in on culture is important. Like, we're hiring not only based upon skill set, we're also hiring based upon the personality of the individual that's coming into our ecosystem, realizing that every new ad can really affect our ecosystem. There's no way around that. So any other thoughts before we move on past that? Okay. So once we go into interviews, so we've created a sheet, and I hadn't planned on sharing this. Let me see how fast I can get to it. Let's see, interview. Yes, good. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen again. So once we have got the job description, once we go live to the market, this is the way that Collab Team does it, is I'll send Drew out, or Stephanie, depending on the role. We're hiring for ACUF ideas for a social media marketing person. And so I'll give Drew a set of questions that I want him to ask. He'll go through and ask those questions and bring them back to me with kind of a summary of what his thoughts are on this person and if she should be escalated to a second level interview. Then once I do a second level interview, I'll come here and I've got my own set of questions that I'm going to work through that person on. I'll also give them some expectations of the role, see how that hits them, see if that fits them. And then at the very end of mine, I'll come down here and I'll do a summary. These are my summary thoughts. Usually pay is part of that. So Collab Team will go out and do, some Glassdoor searches. We'll do some salary.com searches. We'll do some other searches on LinkedIn to see what is the going rate for this role in our market. Different markets are different things, and you'll see a lot of that here. Glassdoor and Nashville market is 50 to 72,000, but ZipRecruiter was only 44 to 65. And salary was 40 to 70. So you've got a pretty decent spread there. When it comes to negotiation, what kind of dollar bills you should be talking about, because some applicants, that's where they'll start with, like, why waste their time if it's not going to work? Other applicants want to get all the way through this because, like you were saying, Kimberly, they'll pretty much take anything. They just want to get in the door, but having that kind of data helps our decision maker once we push it up to that next level interview to make decisions. And then finally, as we search out the references, this gal didn't make it to the second interview. I guess she made it to me, but not to John. So whoever's the final decision maker, sometimes that comes in even as a third interview. Like, we've been hiring a lot for EAs, for CEOs. Like, that's a big deal. So I'll take them through a couple reps before I send them up to the CEO. But then I'll also do references. And these are the questions I usually ask references. So I think having a go-to system that you go to every time you go to hire, you can start training people end over end on exactly what you want them to be looking for. And that way it's not something that you need to rethink about every single time. Just roll them straight up on the template. And if you've trained people to do entry-level interviews, they do entry-level interviews, then they escalate up. And I'm always part of the second level interview. And then if there's a third level, if there's a CEO that needs to be involved, then I'll be a part of that interview as well, just so that I'm culturing somebody all the way through. I'm a good connection point. And then any deliverables that come out of it, we push everybody through the Colby test to do personality tests, whoever we're matching them up with, to make sure they're going to match. That's my job to roll that out. That's my job to bring the details back. That's my job to compare the Colbys to different side. And yeah, I'll start with a text Kimberly for references. So I'll text all the references and say, hey, Kimberly's applying for a position within our organization. She's put you down as her reference. Would you have time for a 5 to 7 minute conversation about Kimberly? And sometimes they say yes, other times they just text me back, but that's just usually my final check and balance. That means they've made the initial vetting through Drew and Stephanie. They've then made the second vetting of me. So then I'll push it up to the CEO or whoever else is hiring for this position. And if they make it through all 3 of those tiers, then I'll push out Colby to make sure that we're just checking all the balances, making sure their personality is going to fit right. And then absolutely my last step will be, I'm going to call references. That way I know as we bring this person in, like Terrence said, it may seem like a lot of steps. A lot of people are like, just hire them. I like that person. CEOs are so bad at this. They're like, that person's great. I love working with that person. They're going to be amazing. But a lot of times they're choosing people just like them. And they're already a hard tornado to hold on to. You know what I mean? So it's like you bring in 5 more just like them. That's not going to solve the operational, pain point. So a lot of times we are going to take it slow for the sake of making sure they're going to fit, not only how we feel about them, not only metrically how they're measuring with Colby, but then obviously always, are the references going to speak well of them? What's the context they know them in? Is it their mom, or did they work with them in a working situation? So, and then we hire. Usually for us, the final step is pushing out an offer letter, and the offer letter lines out what the pay is going to be, 90-day review, if there are any benefits associated with the hire. Some of our clients have benefits, others have what I would call perks. or maybe they get some free things here or there, or maybe they've signed up for some different programs that are a high dollar. I think Chandler Bolt does this really well. I mean, like I don't know that they offer insurance right now, but Chandler's bought all these high-end programs and he makes all of those available to anybody that comes in. They can just log in and consume his content, which these guys buy a lot of high tier stuff that probably most of us average people aren't going to spend on. I know Pedro just spent like 60K on some sales training program. Like I'm never going to pay 60K for a sales training program, but I'll tell you what, I like to listen through it because I feel like all I'm getting is good education. If it's not on my time, that's a perk, like I wouldn't have had that education if I hadn't worked for him as a client. So I think there are a lot of cool things you can do with benefits or perks, one side or the other. So you push out the offer letter, you get them hired in, and then you have a start date. Does anybody want to talk about that before we move on to what onboarding looks like?
Aaron, I think you did a great job talking about it.
That is the nicest thing you've said today.
Yeah, I don't have much to add because I haven't done that part in a while. Yeah, you've been doing that. We had Stephanie doing that. Steven's been helping out.
Yep, good stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so then I'm going to share my screen and talk onboarding here for a minute. So you all know, if you've been tracking with us for any amount of time, that we lean into Asana. Asana is kind of our jam when it comes to end-over-end tools. I will say this, like Asana works like probably any other project management tool out there. Monday.com. I know there are tasks that you can set up within Salesforce that could work a similar way. I know Pedro's organization has started leaning more into Notion when it comes to what they're doing for end-over-end process. The thing I like about Asana is twofold. First of all, it's free for the first 15 people. That means you can really get buy-in from your organization before you buy into a higher paid tool, because there's nothing that's suckier when you've done all the vetting and then you roll something out and it's like, wah, 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 like the whole thing flops and you just invested all this cash into it that you can't recoup, only to find out your team's not going to integrate well with it. So Asana is great for me personally, because some people will lean into Trello, which is also a free tool. Downside to Trello for me is I feel like it's very visible, like it's very visual. You're moving cards rather than spreadsheets. The cool thing about Asana is you can do both cards and spreadsheets. You can also do Gantt in Asana as well. So everything that's triggered on a predecessor, Kimberly has to get her stuff done before I can get my stuff done, and you create timelines. All of that is just simply how you want to line it out, and that's up here at the top. They line it out for you. I could look at the same project several different ways. I really like that. But for me, I just feel like Asana is a good meet in between. Like for me, I'm a spreadsheet guy. I would rather look at spreadsheets all day. I still own Smartsheets. We still use Smartsheets for some of our stuff, but that's all spreadsheet. And some people are like, oh my gosh, throw me off the side of a bridge. Getting a CEO to look at a spreadsheet is not the funnest experience. Like they want a dashboard, they don't want the details, so something like Asana is nice because I feel like it kind of is a meet in the middle. Any plugs on Asana from you, Taryn? What do you like about Asana?
I like that their free version doesn't hold back a lot of info. Like the main thing you're losing is reporting and some of the advanced features. It's not like one of those free versions where they give you just enough to make you want more. It gives you everything you need. We've been using it for a long time.
Yeah, I think too, like I feel like every software vetting program I throw Savannah into becomes that. Like she'll go in and she'll find this thing and it's like the best thing in the world, and then we'll get it and it's like, oh, but if you really want the cool stuff, then you got to upgrade. And Savannah's like, son of, that was not clear on the demo. Go ahead.
Well, and the way that they get you is that on the demo, like on the trial, they won't let you just use the basic version in the trial.
That's right.
I'm like, don't give me those features in the trial. Like, give me, like, I promise you, I'm not giving you guys a lot of money. Like, just give it to me that way. So
I think, Savannah, you do it so good though, because I feel like anytime you roll it out with another team, you're just like, hey, don't fall in love with these bells and whistles. I mean, like you'll always line up on, hey, these 5 things, that's not going to be how ours works. So don't fall in love with those.
Don't use this.
These are the core things that you need to ask yourself, is this going to work for what we're trying to solve? I think you do that really well. So well done on that side. So let's look at onboarding. So for me, the thing I love about Asana is that you can create reoccurring tasks. You can do that probably in any project management tool. I know Teamwork does the same thing. But here is my main one. This is when I'm kicking off a welcome to the Collab team. These are the steps for me. So in the name template, I'll put Aaron's for Stephanie. And that's my jobs I need to do to get Stephanie set up. But then there's another one down below it that says onboarding the Collab way. And then that would just say Stephanie inside of the brackets. Because sometimes if you're hiring multiple people, you need to know who you're pushing these out to. And so usually it says template here. I'll change it out to the name of whoever the owner is going to be when there's going to be an end over in the same task. And then this is my role. If I was to be kicking off something new, is the welcome emails where we start. And I try to, for me personally, drop in whatever I'm going to need to do whatever it is that I'm doing. So for me, there's here's where the body of the email is. Here's where the new contractor agreement is. Here's where the W-9 is. I don't have to go searching for those things. It's all just within the task. Keeps it really clean, keeps it simple, and helps me to know the steps. So once I send out the welcome email, I'll edit and send out the new contractor agreement. I'll receive the new contractor agreement signed, and then I'll create them a Collab Team email address. So I want to make sure they've signed all my NDAs, that they're clear on what the role is going to be. This is obviously once they've already accepted the job. And then I'll create a Collab email for them, and I'll add them to the Collab Team library. For us, the team library is just the core of documents you're going to need as you work with the Collab Team. I think, Kimberly, you guys call yours the toolbox. Is that what yours is called?
We have toolboxes for everything, but yeah, we have onboarding toolboxes, and then we have individual for like each specific job. So like when you come on, you got like, here's how you get paid and all that stuff. And like, so anyone who comes on, they're going to need this stuff. So welcome to the team. And then we have individualized toolboxes for like, if you're coming into this team, here's what you're going to need to do the job over here. And it's great because the team library is something that they don't have to panic like, oh my gosh, my first week, I got to learn all this stuff. It's like, no, it's here for you. And you can refer back to it at any time.
That's good. I like that. And then what I'll do is after I've added them to the library, we live in the G Suite world. And so their email is going to be tied to a drive. That's what I share into their drive, is the shared file of the Collab library. And then I'll create a pay ledger and I'll share it with them. You know, we use pay ledgers for all of our different clients, all listed out. And then I'll combine all those pay ledgers when I go to bill. So they'll start with their own pay ledger and I'll share it with them. Also shared to their Collab Team email. The reason why everything gets shared with Collab Team emails is if we ever have a bad situation where something goes wrong, thankfully we've never had this yet, but if something goes wrong and I need to shut them off, I want to make sure I've shut them off with things that I control. You know, if I turn off their passwords, if I, de-escalate their account, if I just put that into archive, I want to make sure that I own all the assets. So that's why I'm sharing the library with their Collab. I'm sharing the pay ledger with their Collab. Anything that I share with them is only Collab. I try and stay away from their personal email. Unless we're talking about like tax stuff, sometimes I'll send tax stuff to their personal email because I feel like that probably has more to do with them than it does for me. So 1099s at the end of the year, a lot of times I'll send to just their personal email rather than my Collab. And then as we go down, I'll invite the new Collab email to onboarding project in Asana, which is this next one I'm going to show you here in a minute. And then I'll add them to the calendar invite. And a Zapier reminder, which is for us, the calendar invite and Zapier reminder tells people when they need to submit their pay ledger. So I'll just make sure I add them to both. And then I'll add them to our team roster. I'll add them to the Collab bandwidth, which is the way that we track how much bandwidth we have left as an organization. That keeps a really good pulse on growth. How much more room do we have in people's schedules to schedule out work? And then I'll add them to the 555 rotation. For me, the beauty of all those things is it's a recurring. So down here, you'll see scheduling the 555 is a recurring. You can see that by this loop on the backside of your dates. And at a quick glance, I can see who's already set up with me and who hasn't. So majority of my team's already set up, but it looks like I need to go chase down Jesh. I know Drew's meeting with me this week. Steven's meeting with me this week. And Brian Fowler, I still need to chase down. So I know that everybody on my team, when they're set for their 555s, and this reminder just automatically kicks off a reminder to them within their Asana to book a time with me. Hey, update your 555 eval, book a time with me, and I don't have to think about it. They just show up on my scheduler and we can meet that week, which is awesome. Just automations, things I don't have to high touch. So that's what all of my steps are. Does anybody have any questions about those before I go into the actual onboarding for a new hire?
I think it's just good to know that it is a tedious process, and having your checklist there is very important, because if you're not going to set them up successfully, then they have no idea what they're doing. They're like, all right, great, I have a job, now what?
That's right. And probably it's frustration on both sides, right? Because if they don't know what they're doing, I'm going to end up frustrated with them. I'm like, you got here, dude. I need help. The reason I hired is I need help. But if I didn't set them up for success, I'm setting them up for failure before they get there. And then I get frustrated with them. Like it's been said before, there's no bad employees, only bad managers. And I do really think that's true. Like because what that means is if you have somebody that's underperforming, they need to be cut. Like, don't dick around with it. Like if you've had your 5.55s and you've talked about the same things more than once or twice, they're just not a fit, and you just need to let them go. They may be a bad employee, but it's on us not to be bad managers to hold on to them too long. And same thing with when it comes to like hiring and training. Like if we haven't given them good tools, that's not their fault for the way they're showing up. That's our fault for what we're supplying to them and holding them accountable to key performance indicators, KPIs. All of our job descriptions should have those in them. That shouldn't be a surprise when we tell them, hey, this is what we're going to hold you accountable to. So any other thoughts before I move on to the other?
Yeah, I love the bandwidth. That seems like a very valuable tool if you're going to be working with contractors, because
Yes.
contractors and employees have totally different like schedules and the way they work. And I love that you guys are incorporating that, and I would love to see more on that later.
Of course. And I
Kimberly's just digging into your tools, Aaron. She wants
love
more
it.
tools.
She's like, send me this, send me that. I can show you bandwidth real quick because it's easy to grab.
It's great.
Totally screenshotted it.
Dude, screenshot it up.
As a contractor, it is great too, because if someone is a workaholic, we're often not paying attention to our own bandwidth and like aren't keeping a good score on like how many things we're saying yes to. So having that reminder, like Aaron has even built it into our timesheets that we use, that we submit. And so as you're plugging in your hours for the week, you can see in real time, you're like, oh my gosh, like I am at 75% of my bandwidth and I still have another week left. Like I need to back off of some things and rearrange my schedule. And so it's like, it's just so helpful for your team that we have this tool. It's fantastic.
And really, it's the whole reason I do it is for the sake of giving me an understanding of where the team's at, so I know how many new clients we can take on. If we're maxing at 95%, I need to be really careful on how many new clients I take on. So that also is the indicator for me how I need to hire. And it's all driven based upon desired hours and worked hours. Redlining means, we've over exceeded. Anything else that's over is under. And then I've got a comparison of last week versus this week, last week versus this week, and I can see where there's variance. So for me, like coming out of a Pedro Deo, like we did a big conference for him, like we were traveling at 91% bandwidth because I was using so much of the team. But now that we're not in live event mode, it opens up more opportunity for us to take on more work and me to be selective on what's coming up this month. And do I want to participate in a live event based upon other things that are on our plate? So does that answer your question on bandwidth, Kimberly?
Yes, I love this. This is great. And integrating it into the timesheet is awesome. And I'm just wondering like how we could do that in our Clockify system, because I really love this.
Yeah, Clockify is pretty impressive. I'm sure they've got something that will lend itself to what you're trying to do. Okay, so then let's go back to Asana. So we talked through what my roles are, and Taryn, I'm going to kick it over to you in a minute with offboarding after I do this section. So this is our onboarding, and in fact, I'm going to break it out because I feel like it's going to be easier to track that way. So for onboarding, once I've got their email address, I introduce them to this onboarding step. I always suggest like dropping in a description for any task that you give someone. You've assigned it to them as a name, and then I'll usually give them 2 weeks. Take your time. You don't have to kill yourself going through the onboarding stuff. I don't want you to have to put in a ton of hours. Our onboarding takes anywhere from 3 to 6 hours, depending on the person. So take your time. Like it doesn't all have to happen today, but it also gives them something to slowly chip at. So intro to Asana project management, and then obviously they have subtasks beneath that. Usually I'll have them watch a video, read an article, then comment for me back on what they are, and then watch these things on YouTube and give me some comments on what you like best. The comments let me know, and Asana for you. So all those steps are learning Asana. I want them to be familiar with our project management tool. And as they give me comments, it shows me they're doing it. That way they can't just check. Well, if I see somebody that's check all the way through and I haven't seen any comments back, I can go back and say, hey, I didn't see your comments on that. And it's just an accountability piece that they're not just rushing their way through onboarding, but they're taking their time. Log into your Collab Team email and create your signature. Within that one, I give them, like I told you before, here's the explanation, here's the assets. So it's all self-contained. They don't have to come back to me asking for things. Log into your Collab Team email and request access to the OOO out of office calendar, because that way it enables them to tell us when they're going on vacation. Fill out the Collab Team profile member form. So that's simply us knowing your favorites, like your colors, the things that you enjoy. It's just some personal questions so that we can reward you and have surprise and delight with you as our employee or as a contractor that works with us. How does pay work at the Collab Team? I give them the opportunity to review the pay info, watch the video on how pay ledgers work, and then send Aaron an email requesting that you share your that he share your pay ledger with you. I've already created this, remember, in mine, but I'm going to wait for them to request it from me to know that they're checking the boxes. I want to see how everything that I do, I'm testing people. Like, are you going to be watching details? Because that's going to give me an opportunity to, grow them. Hey, I feel like you're rushing through stuff. Don't rush. It's fine. You're going to be okay. Take your time, but I need you to do all those things. How does pay work? Communication best modes. I'll walk people through how I want them to communicate with us. How does password sharing work for the Collab team? I'll walk them through that. Document meeting notes and deliverables. This, if you do meetings, this is how I want. Kimberly's familiar with our Collab team meeting style, because I do that with her on one-on-ones. And within any of these, I'm giving them a couple steps, like watch the meetings note video and then save a copy of the notes template onto your team drive. That way they have all the assets they need for whatever they're going to need in the future. Then I'll go on to project assignment protocol. So this is how you're going to receive work from Aaron or Taryn or somebody on the team. Intro to Collab team ethos. We've spent quite a bit of time on our ethos in the past, but it's really important for me to have people, hey, watch the intro from me, spend about 15 minutes reading through the ethos, and then comment below 3 top things that resonated with you most. Like, I want to hear those things and I want to just anchor them in culture early on. So that's ethos. The development plan, that's how they escalate within the Collab team ecosystem. How do you grow? Where are you going? What are you achieving for? How are you going to make it there? I line that out a couple different ways. There's a video, there's a document they review, and then there's the toolbox survey, which tells us where you're coming in at. It creates their baseline so we know how to promote them, and then an intro to the toolbox. And then they just spend some time in it, doctoring their things and sharing it with me. Once they've made the copy for themselves, they can share it that way. And then I take them through our ideal and avatar sales copy so they understand who we're going after. What is our business model? The Collab Kudo rules, the Captain Quack Sparrow, whoever's gonna win. Savannah just took the Collab team member of the quarter, and she got the most kudos, and therefore we pass around a little Captain Quack that Taryn kicked off, and they all have to sign their name on it like tattoos on. It's just a little rubber ducky with an eye patch, but it's pretty fun. We have fun with that one. And then schedule a meeting with Aaron to discuss next steps. This is always whoever's going to be their direct report is who I want them to, but usually for Collab team, I'm the one they're answering to first, and so I'll have them there. But if it was an internal team like this, I would change this name to whoever it is that they're going to be answering to. And then if there's other ecosystems that they need to be introduced to, like Slack, I would put it on the hiring manager's job to add them to the correct Slack channels you want them to have. If there are drive folders that are particular to department, make sure you add them into those drive folders, because that's not something that I can do for them. I can give them the good feels as they come in, but if they're going to plug into certain projects downstream, they may need that from somebody above them. Any thoughts around this?
Yeah, I want to hit on that last one with like relaying back and forths to whoever that may be. We're working on, for our application review team, we're just kind of like dialing in our, like how we hire people and our little onboarding mini course. And we're actually getting the team members to put together the pieces of it.
Yeah.
And it's been really fun, just like taking our time with it and enjoying it. And one thing that we landed on was when someone comes in, they're going to be assigned an onboarding buddy, who's just another team member who is going to be like their first point of contact. So if it's like, I checked my email and I didn't get my Rainmaker email, it's like, that's the person who they're going to go to first. And if that person can't figure it out and they're like, oh, you just need to sign out of this thing and re-sign into Google and use your stuff. And but if they can't figure it out, then they would relay it to the manager of that team. And
That's
so that
great.
kind of like, it gives them an instant connection, but it also kind of frees up the manager to continue to do their job and not have like so much of the weight of training the new person when it is something that someone else could do who's already doing that job.
That's beautiful. Delegate and elevate. Like that's not a brilliance. That doesn't have to be the manager's brilliance. That can be handed down to anybody that's been around for a while. And also it's a good opportunity to escalate. I know Taryn and I being in coffee for so long, trying to create how do you elevate people up? Well, the way you elevate somebody from a barista to an assistant manager is give them a lead slot. It's just a little bit more like sometimes there's more pay, sometimes they're not, sometimes it's just more responsibility, but you're growing them and they love getting to stretch their legs a little bit. And that's another one of those examples is you're just creating like multi-tiers within the growth pattern of your organization. When you bring people into stuff like that, be somebody's buddy. That shows us you're ready for leadership. That shows us you have management potential based upon how you're showing up with our new hires. So I think that's a really good one, Kimberly. Taryn,
Yeah, I think it is important to note, like she mentioned, you will have maybe department specific onboarding steps next. So you have your whole company global. This is how you run as a company. But then, yeah, you do, as they go to the marketing department, they might need to get set up into different apps that the marketing team controls, or different processes that they're in place. It doesn't always have to be the one on top. They could have somebody else under them that does all that for that department.
That's good. I like that. Savannah girl, anything from you?
Just kind of adding on to Taryn's note is that when you do pass them on to the next department, it is also important to make sure, rather than just being like, well, they're the manager of their department and they're gonna, they'll handle it, doing a checks and balances, making sure that they have a similar system kind of like you have here. So that way, 2 months down the line, things aren't working out the way that you thought. And then you're like, what's going on? And then they're like, well, I shadowed this person for 3 days, but I don't have any resources because that department doesn't have something set up as robust as the overall onboarding. It's just important to have a good structure for all of them, checks and balances, make sure everyone's doing what they should.
It's really good. Taryn, what's that? Is that a whale?
I'm just having a whale of a time,
I
Aaron.
love whale of a good time. I once, when I started working for the credit union here, before I started Collab Team, I was a project manager there. And in my onboarding, they would bring in all the leadership team, including the CEO, for every new hire. They hire 5 people at a time. They would come in and share something about the organization. Usually spend about an hour with us. And one of the things he said at my onboarding that I thought was so true is he said, hey, all of you new hires, you're probably our most valuable right now within the next 6 months. And what that means is we've lost sight of forest for the trees. We don't see the warts on our own face because they've become very common to us. You're seeing it all for the first time. So please jot down things that you're seeing and ask your supervisor about those. Let us know where you feel like there may be things that we could grow in, or we just haven't thought of. We're not perfect, and I think empowering people to have that feedback, that open door of, no, you don't just have to drink the Kool-Aid. Like, what are you seeing to be better at, and then let us. I think the other beauty is if you do 555s quarterly every 90 days, you're going to hit their 90-day 555, which usually in most offer letters, you tell them you want to give them a review in 90 days. So I think trying to create for yourselves easy systems that you don't have to do a lot of maintenance, and you're putting it on the person that's there to try and prove themselves anyway. And then you're only going to benefit both of you guys with what they bring back. That's a win-win. So it's a good one.
Yeah, I love the fresh eyes approach. Just letting people know they can be open. Give us your fresh eyes. We love to have it. We've all been staring at the same thing for too long.
Yep. I love your fresh eyes, by the way. Do you mind taking us through your fresh eyes on teamwork?
Perfect. No problem.
I love that. So now we're going to move to offboarding. So
oh wait, I had one last thing to say about onboarding.
Man, I didn't mean to cut you off, boy. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Once you get this process set up, don't be scared to take everybody you've already hired through it.
Yes. That's a really good one.
So it's not just for newbies. It's be like, all right, you've been working with us for a while, but we finally have our onboarding set up. I know half of this already applies to you, but you know what, just run through it. Give me thoughts, make sure you're on the same page. And just so you know, new hires are being handled this way.
Sometimes if you revamp your onboarding too, you'll find holes and things that your team is already doing. And then you'll be like, yeah, like everyone needs to go through this again.
I think the cool thing about putting it into a task management software, like what we just showed you, is if somebody's continually screwing something up, like pay ledgers, you can be like, hey, will you go back and review the pay ledger section that was part of your onboarding? And then I don't have to coach them. I just need them to go watch the video and do it the way I told them to do it the first time. And that doesn't take my bandwidth. All it takes is one quick Slack, one quick Vox, one quick email back and say, hey, you're consistently making this problem with a pay ledger. Will you do me a favor and just go watch that video again to identify where you're making a mistake? And then that way it cuts down on some of the chatter back and forth, which is rad. So I totally agree with Taryn and Savannah. Like, let's see how onboarding is working for all of our people, not just our news. Okay, Taryn, now would you take us through offboarding?
Perfect.
Somebody doesn't make it or has been poached out from underneath us.
Would you be so kind as to let me share my screen?
Oh, man, I feel like you asked for a lot, but yeah, I guess. Go ahead.
Yes. All right. Well, I am in Teamwork here, which is a different version of Asana, Monday, Trello, different things. I'm in the templates here. We had helped Advance Your Reach set up some of their onboarding, offboarding stuff. So we do have offboarding in here. I did work with them specifically on G Suite offboarding and help them create a process because number one, we wanted to keep their information. So we wanted to first change their password, but then we also don't want to be paying $6 a month for employees that no longer exist just to have an email.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but it can add up over time. So then we have to create the process. Okay, let's download the email, all the email communications in case we ever need to look up for them, look up any information. Let's make sure all the drive files are added to somebody else and changed ownership. Let's make sure all the calendar events are changed. So that's kind of what the first steps are going into, is more of like, okay, let's lock down our information and make sure they're removed from programs we're paying for in a safe manner, because you don't just want to delete it and everything's gone and you're like, oh my gosh, where'd everything go? And there was a situation too where I had to go look through their emails that we had downloaded and find certain things that they had promised to somebody. This person that was offboarded that nobody knew about because they were the only person on the email. And then we had to go back through and find and be like, okay, well, we have to commit to that because that employee did promise this to somebody. But then you've got other offboarding. So now you have other apps you're paying for. You're paying for Teamwork users. You're paying for Slack users. You know, your pay ledgers, whatever it is. And then also what are the departments they have access to, you know, what other,
Yeah.
This is where they have their login details for all the sites. Make sure we're removing that access, transferring files. So you could even take your onboarding task list and just duplicate it and reverse it and just say, all right. And that's your starting point. It might be a little different, but it's like, okay, these are all the things we gave them to. Now let's just change it to remove. Any thoughts around that, Aaron?
I'd say, I mean, it seems silly and it seems like something that you would always think, but usually if you've lost somebody, you're usually panicked, right? Like usually losing people, whether you fired them or they've just left, like that's something that, man, that is tough, Michelle. I think so too, Santa. But like, either way, it hits you fast. And a lot of times you're just trying to pick up the pieces, but you can really easily forget, we don't want to leave these people with the keys to the kingdom. You know what I mean? Like, and so I've seen people stick around on Slack way longer than they should have because nobody ever went back through Slack and eliminated them, which means they still see everything that's happening in your organization. And if it ended bad, they could begin to sabotage, you know, and that's another reason why you pull everything back is depending on how it ends, you want to make sure you cut off their ability to poison the well, you know, and any of them have probably all signed within your NDAs have said, hey, they're not going to work with your clients. They're not going to poach your people. So I think that all you have yourselves covered from a legal perspective, but this can sometimes just be neglect, right? We forgot to take them out of Slack. And so they're still seeing all your proprietary stuff happening, still seeing how things are traveling with different clients or customers, still seeing where there are pain points. And that can all add artillery to people downstream. It's just so much easier just to say, hey, so grateful for you. Always leave them with I would say always leave them with kind words, even if they've totally done wrong by you. Hey, we wish them the best in all their future endeavors. And man, just be kind with them on the way out the door. At the same time, shut it all off. Like don't leave yourself open and vulnerable, because I think that can be something that can really bite you in the ass downstream.
Yeah, it really circles back to, I love circling back to the
A lot of circles.
you know what, Savannah, I just realized that's from the previous meeting you and I were just at, not this meeting.
Yep.
So it's only funny to you and me.
Inside joke.
Circles back to the importance of just the G Suite or wherever you want to set up your company accounts, like having an email address that you're providing to your employees that you control, because then you have control if things go wrong or they leave and you need to remove all this access, and not an email address that they just have that they've been using for work.
A lot of people too like lean into the free of the G Suite with Gmail. You know, so maybe it's their first name dot whatever their company's name is at gmail.com, which seems really cool and really fun because you don't pay any money for it. You don't have any control over that. So if that person leaves, they're the only one that has control over that. So then you've got to trust they're going to get that back to you, and it can just set you up for like some pretty big pain when they own all your assets. Maybe they've been creating a bunch of stuff for you that's all saved to their company email that they control. So you lose all their assets, you lose everything that they did for you while they were gone, just without paying that $6. Pay the $6. Like it's worth it. I think if they've actually increased a little bit now, but like it's just worth paying for it for the sake of safety of mind. Sleep well at night. And then that way, just like Taryn said, you can archive their drive, and then you can forward all their emails to whoever their manager is. And then they can see exactly what's been going on, coming and going, and then they can continue conversations from there. So I think G Suite does it really well. I think we all know that we're not a big fan of Microsoft around here when it comes to some of their environments. So I would always lean into G Suite just for the sake of how well it integrates with everything and how easy they make things like onboarding or offboarding. So
Well, calendar works more seamlessly when you're all in G Suite also versus trying to invite everybody's different personal email addresses. It's a pain in the butt.
not to mention living documents. I know that Microsoft tries to use their cloud, but I just have never had good experience with their OneDrive, where I was actually working on a living document that actually could be used by multiple people without screwing stuff up. I really love the way that G Suite has made it so living. As I'm updating, Terrence sees it real time. As Terrence updating, I'm seeing it real time. I think it's cool.